The prairie stretched wide and quiet under a dying sun, nothing but dry wind and shadows dancing across the tall grass. A lone rider made her way through the land, dust clinging to her boots, her hair tangled with travel. She couldn't have been older than 16, maybe 17, but her eyes held a kind of tiredness that belonged to old souls. No one knew her name. No one knew where she came from. But the land did. It watched her, like it remembered. She arrived just before sundown in a place not marked on any map. A tiny settlement, half a dozen shacks, a crooked saloon, one church, and a general store held together by stubborn nails and desperation. Folks didn't get visitors here, not unless they were lost running or looking for something they couldn't name. And she looked like all three. Her horse collapsed before reaching the well. Dust choked its lungs and the girl barely had the strength to pull herself off the saddle. She stumbled, knees buckling, falling hard against the dirt. That's when someone finally moved. An old woman, dark skin weathered like leather, long silver braids hanging down her back, stepped out from a shaded porch. She walked slow, cane in hand, but her eyes didn't miss a thing. The townsfolk watched, silent and still. The old woman reached the girl, knelt beside her, and pressed a wrinkled hand to her forehead. "She's burning," she said, "and empty. Should we send her back out?" someone asked. The woman didn't answer. She just lifted the girl with a strength no one expected and took her into her home. That night, the town whispered. About the girl, about the old woman. Her name was Elder Mahala, the oldest living soul in that part of the West. She was Apache by blood, healer by trade, and some said she could see the dead. She'd lived through 2 wars and a massacre, and folks claimed she hadn't aged in 20 years. Whether they feared her or respected her, no one dared question her. By morning, the girl was still unconscious, her sleep restless. She mumbled in half-words, sometimes in English, sometimes in Apache, sometimes in something else entirely. Mahala sat beside her, eyes closed, humming old songs, not to comfort but to guard. Something about the girl felt out of place, like she didn't just wander in, like she was dropped here by something older than luck. When the girl finally woke, she didn't ask where she was. She asked, "Why?" Mahala answered with silence. The days passed slow, as they always did out here. The girl, who called herself Nia, barely spoke. She watched. The hills, the wind, the faces of strangers who didn't want her here. They were polite, but guarded. Suspicious. This wasn't a land kind to outsiders. She helped with chores, fed the chickens, hauled water. She tried to fit in, but you can't force yourself to belong. One afternoon, she wandered past the edge of town, toward the sandstone cliffs that rose like sleeping giants. Mahala followed her from a distance, not saying a word. When Nia reached a flat outcrop that looked over the valley, she sat. Mahala joined her, lowering herself with a grunt. "Feels like I don't belong anywhere," Nia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not supposed to," Mahala replied. "Not yet." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means you haven't found your fire yet." "Your reason." "The land don't take you in till you give it a reason to." Nia shook her head. "I'm tired of looking." Mahala studied her for a long time. "Sometimes the land chooses you, not the other way around." That night, the wind picked up strange, the kind of wind that carried voices if you listened close. Mahala sat outside her cabin, chewing tobacco and watching the moon rise. Nia was asleep inside, but something was shifting. The animals were restless. The dogs wouldn't stop growling at nothing. The ground felt wrong, like something was walking beneath it. At dawn, smoke rose from the north ridge. Not wildfire smoke, campfire smoke. Organized, intentional. Riders had been seen earlier, men with painted faces. Not Comanche, not Apache, outsiders, mercenaries. And they weren't here for trade. Mahala gathered the townsfolk. Her voice was sharp, no nonsense. "We're being watched. Someone's looking for something. Or someone." Eyes turned toward Nia. "She ain't one of us," the storekeeper mumbled. "She ain't one of them either," Mahala snapped. "She's here now, and she's under my roof." But doubt had taken root. People who had nodded at Nia the day before now avoided her eyes. Whispers grew teeth. That evening, Nia sat on the church steps. Mahala sat beside her. "Why do they hate me?" "They don't hate you," Mahala said. "They fear you. There's a difference." "Why?" "Because they see what you don't yet." They see a storm behind your eyes. Nia looked away. I didn't ask for any of this. Doesn't matter. The land asked for you. The moment hung between them like smoke. Then, barely above a whisper, Nia asked, Where do I belong? Mahala reached out, placed her hand gently on the girl's shoulder. Her voice was soft but unshakable. Here, always. And just like that, the wind stilled, the moon rose brighter, and the ground seemed to exhale. But the peace wouldn't last. Something was coming, and it had her scent. The next morning came too quiet. No birdsong, no boots on the boardwalk, no doors creaking open. Just that heavy silence that settles before a storm. Nia woke with her heart pounding, no dream to blame. Something had shifted in the night, something she couldn't name. She stepped outside and found the street empty. Not a soul in sight. Dust floated through the air like ash. Even the wind had vanished. Mahala was already waiting on the porch, sharpening her old knife, eyes scanning the horizon like a hawk. They're closer now, she said, without looking up. Who? The ones riding from the north? I can feel 'em in my bones. How do you know they're coming for me? Mahala finally looked at her. Because they've got nothing else worth coming this far for. Nia's breath caught. I don't remember doing anything. That don't mean you didn't. She wanted to argue. Wanted to scream that it wasn't fair. But something in Mahala's voice shut her down. The truth wasn't always clean. Sometimes it came wrapped in blood and dust. By midday, the riders were in view. 10 of them. Black coats, rifles, painted faces, a flag stitched with red lightning. They didn't rush. They came like they had time. Like they knew fear was part of the plan. The townsfolk gathered behind Mahala's cabin, armed with what they had, shotguns, pistols, pitchforks, and the weight of not having any other choice. Nia stood among them, heart beating too loud, hands shaking. She felt like the center of a story she hadn't asked to be part of. The lead rider stopped just outside the boundary stones, where the grass gave way to the sacred line Mahala had carved in salt and ash. He didn't cross, just sat on his massive black horse scanning the town with a face carved from bone and time. You got something that belongs to us, he called out. His voice was calm, too calm. Mahala stepped forward. Ain't got nothing of yours here. The rider's grin showed yellow teeth. That girl. She's got blood on her hands whether she knows it or not. Nia's stomach twisted. What's he talking about? She whispered. Mahala didn't answer. Not right away. She comes with us. The rider continued. Or we burn it all down. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Until Nia did. She stepped forward. Just one step. Her voice cracked, but she stood tall. Why are you after me? The rider tilted his head. You really don't know, do you? Guess they scrubbed you good. Mahala's face darkened. Tell her, the rider said, eyes locked on the elder. Tell her what she is. Silence. Mahala's shoulders were stiff. She didn't want to say it. But the girl deserved the truth. You ain't just anyone, Mahala said. You're the daughter of the last flamebinder. Apache blood mixed with something older. Your mother was hunted for it, died trying to keep you hidden. Nia felt like the ground dropped from under her. What does that mean? It means you got power, girl. Power they want. Power they'll kill to control. Nia stepped back. No, that's not me. I'm not anything. The rider laughed. You're right. You're not anything and yet. But you will be. And when you burn, you'll burn bright enough to scorch the world. Mahala raised her hand. You want her? You'll have to go through me. The rider nodded once. Slow. So be it. He turned and rode off, his men following like wolves behind a scent. No bullets. Not yet. This wasn't a fight. This was a warning. They wanted the town to stew in fear. Let it boil over into something they could use. That night, the people turned on Nia. This is your fault, someone shouted. You brought this death. She's cursed. She's one of them. Mahala stood between Nia and the crowd, her knife drawn. You touch her, and I'll send your soul screaming back to your grandmother. The silence that followed was thick and angry. Nia ran. She didn't stop until she reached the cliffs again, the place where Mahala once told her the land chooses who belongs. Now she wasn't so sure. The stars were out, and for the first time she looked up and asked aloud, What am I? And the wind answered. It swept through the cliffs, roaring like fire. The earth trembled just slightly, and the lake below reflected a shape that wasn't hers. It was larger, burning, ancient. She stumbled back, breath shaking. She was afraid of herself, of what she might be. Mahala found her there, sometime near dawn. You felt it, didn't you? The elder asked. Nia nodded, tears on her face. I don't want it. Doesn't matter, it's yours. What if I hurt people? Mahala took a breath. That's why I'm going to teach you not to. Nia looked at her, eyes wide. But why help me? And that's when Mahala said it again, quietly, the way only someone who means it can. Because you asked where you belonged, and I told you. Here, always. But even as those words wrapped around her heart, thunder rolled in the distance. The riders would return, and this time, they wouldn't ask. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, but the town was already awake. Doors slammed, boots thudded on dirt. Voices barked orders and fear in equal measure. Everyone knew what was coming, and no one knew how to stop it. Nia stood outside Mahala's cabin, watching the sky go from black to ash gray. Her hands were clenched tight, but her thoughts were looser than ever. Everything felt wrong. Her memories were still foggy. Scraps of fire, her mother's screams running under moonlight. But now she couldn't tell if they were real or something Mahala had planted. Either way, they'd brought her here, and now her presence was a death sentence. Mahala was inside, mixing herbs, powder, and bone. Her hands moved with practiced precision, like she'd done it 1,000 times before and would do it 1,000 times more. But this time, there was urgency in her movements. They'll be back at sundown, she said without turning. 10 men, maybe more, and they won't ride slow this time. We can leave, Nia said. We should. It's me they want. Mahala looked up sharply. You run now, you run forever. This ends here. But I don't even know what I am. Yes, you do. You just ain't ready to face it. Nia opened her mouth to argue but stopped when Mahala handed her a leather pouch. Inside was a stone no bigger than her palm, carved with symbols that shimmered faintly like embers. It was warm to the touch. This belonged to your mother, Mahala said. She left it with me before she vanished. Told me if you ever found your way back to give it to you. Back? Nia asked. You mean, I've been here before? You were born here, Mahala said, her voice low. Right in this valley. But your mama ran when they came. Took you far and hid you deep. I thought you'd never come back. Nia stared at the stone. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. What does it do? Mahala looked out the window. Whatever you need it to. By midday, the riders returned. But this time they didn't stop at the edge of town. They came straight in, fast and loud. Hooves thundered through the streets. Guns drawn. Faces painted for war. The townsfolk scattered, ducking behind barrels, doors, whatever they could find. One of the riders lit a bottle of kerosene and hurled it through the saloon window. Flames roared to life, devouring dry wood in seconds. Bring out the girl, the leader shouted, or we burn every inch of this place. Nia stood in the center of the street, the stone in her hand glowing brighter now, almost white-hot. Mahala was beside her, staff in one hand, a knife in the other. You think I'm scared of you? Mahala growled. The lead rider smiled. No, I think you're old. And I think she doesn't know what she's doing. He pointed to Nia. You don't even know what you are, do you, girl? You think that rock'll save you? You think the old woman can protect you forever? Nia didn't answer. Her fingers tightened around the stone. It pulsed again, harder this time, and she felt something shift inside her. Not a voice, not a thought, a feeling, something ancient stirring in her bones. The air thickened. The dust stopped blowing, and for one long second the entire town held its breath. Then Nia spoke. Soft at first, almost a whisper. Words in a tongue she didn't remember learning. The ground vibrated beneath her feet. The stone pulsed in rhythm. A gust of wind shot down the street, nearly knocking the riders off their saddles. The lead rider's face twisted into rage. Kill the witch. Guns fired. But the bullets didn't reach her. A wall of heat exploded from her body. Not fire, not wind. Something in between. The air rippled, twisted, and the riders' horses reared back in panic. Two were thrown from their mounts. One man's coat caught fire without a spark in sight. Mahala stepped forward. Staff pointed. Still think she doesn't know what she's doing? The riders regrouped fast. Their leader barked commands in a language older than English. Something dark, full of harsh syllables. From a leather pouch, he pulled a black talisman carved from bone, slick with some kind of oil. He raised it high, chanting fast. Nia's pulse raced. The warmth in her hand faded. The stone dimmed. Whatever he was doing, it was working. He's drawing from the same blood, Mahala warned. But his is corrupted. What do I do? Push back. Not with power, with memory. Feel who you are. Nia closed her eyes. For a moment, everything went still. Then, a flash. Her mother's voice, calling her by name. A night sky over a canyon lit with fire. The smell of cedar smoke. A lullaby in a tongue she never knew but understood perfectly. Her eyes snapped open. The stone burst into flame. She raised her hand, and the fire didn't burn. It danced. It wrapped around her like armor, like belonging, like purpose. The riders faltered. Their leader screamed in fury, flinging the black talisman at her. Nia caught it in midair. It shattered like glass. A shockwave ripped through the street. Dust, heat, and wind collided in a roar. The riders were thrown back, some unconscious, some scrambling away on foot. Only their leader remained standing, eyes wild, rage bleeding into fear. He looked at Nia and whispered, "This ain't over." Then he vanished into the smoke. The fire died. Silence returned. Nia stood there, shaking, the stone now cold in her palm. Mahala stepped beside her, nodding once. "Told you. It's yours now." Nia looked around. The town scorched but standing. The people emerging slowly, eyes wide. They weren't whispering anymore, they were watching and waiting. Because something had changed. Not just in her, but in all of them. For 3 days, the riders didn't return. The smoke cleared. The saloon was rebuilt with spare timber and strong hands. The people didn't speak much, but their stares toward Nia had shifted. Where once they saw a threat, now they saw a storm. Quiet. Dangerous, but strangely familiar. No one said thank you. No one said, "We're sorry." But she didn't need them to. She'd grown up reading people like books without covers. Fear had many faces. And so did respect. Mahala kept her close, taught her more each day. How to move with the wind, how to feel the shift in the earth, how to listen not just with ears but with the marrow in her bones. The flame inside Nia didn't burn like it used to. It didn't rage. It pulsed. It waited. She was learning to carry it, not cage it. But in the quiet moments, she still asked questions. Why me? Mahala's answer never changed. Because the land called your blood. Sometimes that answer was enough. Other times it wasn't. One evening, just before sunset, Mahala took her to the ridge again, the place where fire met sky. "There's something you need to see," she said. They stood at the edge of the cliff while the horizon bled orange and red. Mahala knelt and pulled back a patch of dry earth, revealing a hidden stone plate carved with the same symbols as Nia's talisman. She placed her hand on it. The ground glowed faintly. "This is where your mother made her last stand," Mahala said. "Against them." Nia stared. "She died here?" "No. She vanished. Gave herself to the fire to keep you hidden. The enemy thought they'd won. But she didn't leave nothing behind. She left you." Nia knelt and placed her palm on the stone. It was warm, familiar, like part of her had always been here. "She never meant for you to hide forever," Mahala continued. "She meant for you to rise, and that time's coming faster than I hoped." That night thunder rolled over the hills again. The wind changed direction, and a black bird landed on the cross atop the church and refused to move. The enemy was coming back. But not just riders this time. Something worse. By morning, the signs were clear. Cattle missing, dogs howling through the night, strange symbols carved into tree trunks around the town. Someone, or something, was circling them. Nia stood in the center of town, hands in her pockets, staring at the rising dust in the distance. "They're not waiting anymore." Mahala stood beside her, staff gripped tight. "No, they've seen what you can do. Now they want to break you before you learn what you're really capable of." "What if I'm not strong enough?" Mahala looked at her, calm but fierce. "Girl, you don't survive fire by being soft. You already made it through more than most. Now it's time you stop surviving and start becoming." The riders returned that night. Not 10 this time. 50. All painted in blood and soot. Their leader cloaked in a long black duster stitched with bones. His horse had eyes like coals and hooves that cracked the ground with each step. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. His presence screamed louder than words ever could. Behind him, they dragged someone in chains. It was the preacher. Nia's heart sank. They threw him to the dirt like a warning. The townsfolk gathered, watching in silence, torn between rage and fear. The leader finally spoke. His voice was smoke and gravel. "This town shelters a weapon. That's treason." He turned to Nia. "Come with us, or watch them bleed." Nia stepped forward, fists clenched, but Mahala grabbed her wrist. "Not like this," the elder warned. "They want to see you lose control. You burn now. You burn everyone." Nia's hands trembled. Her anger boiled, but she held it. "I'm not a weapon," she said loud and clear. "I'm a girl who didn't ask for this." The leader chuckled. "We never ask. We just are." He raised his hand. A rider stepped forward, pulled a knife, and placed it against the preacher's neck. That's when the ground cracked. Literally. The earth split in a jagged line between the riders and the townsfolk. Fire erupted, not from Nia's hands, but from beneath the soil. A barrier. A warning. The preacher scrambled back, eyes wide. Mahala didn't blink. She didn't do that. Everyone turned to Nia, but her hands were at her sides, empty. She looked just as shocked as they were. "It's the land," she whispered. "It's answering." The enemy leader snarled. "Then we'll burn the land too." He lifted a horn and blew, and from beyond the ridge they came. More riders, not men, shadows, shapes wearing human skin, hollow-eyed things that smelled like rot and death, creatures conjured from blood magic, loyal only to pain. The town froze. Nia stepped back, shaking. Mahala grabbed her shoulders. "Now listen to me. You are not fire. You are not fear. You are not them. Then what am I?" Mahala looked her in the eyes. "You are balance, the bridge between what was and what can be." Nia didn't feel like a bridge. She felt like a crack. But when she looked at the fire still burning in the earth, at the terrified townspeople behind her, at the preacher who had almost died for her, something shifted. She stepped forward, alone, toward the enemy, and said the words her mother once whispered over her crib. Ancient, powerful, honest. The wind howled in answer, and the sky began to burn. The sky didn't catch fire all at once. It peeled back slowly, like curtains lifting on something ancient and watching. Clouds turned red, then gold, then something that didn't have a name. The creatures froze mid-step. Even the riders hesitated, blinking at the light that wasn't from the sun. Nia stood at the edge of the cracked earth, alone. The words still echoed in her chest even though her lips had gone still. They weren't spells. They weren't magic. They were memory, spoken in the language of bloodlines and dust. Mahala whispered from behind. "She's waking up." The enemy leader snarled and kicked his horse forward. Enough of this. He charged, straight at Nia, and she didn't move. When his horse reached the flames, it screamed and reared, throwing him off. He hit the dirt hard, rolled, and came up fast, blade in hand. His eyes were black now, inhuman, void of anything but rage. "You don't belong here," he hissed. "I do," Nia said, voice steady. "You don't." He rushed her, and this time she moved. She raised her hands not to fight but to open something. The air shimmered, the earth pulsed, and from the canyon beyond the town a sound emerged. Drums, not war drums, heartbeat drums. Old, slow, and sacred. The kind the Apache once used when calling on the spirits of the land. The kind no one had heard in generations. The riders faltered. Some screamed. The shadows twisted, shrieked, and began to fall apart, peeling into smoke as if the sound itself was poison. The leader kept coming. Closer, closer, until Nia whispered something only he could hear. Whatever it was, it stopped him cold. His blade dropped. His knees buckled. He collapsed in the dirt, gasping. Mahala approached, staff in hand. "What did you say to him?" Nia stared at the man, now trembling like a leaf in a storm. His real name. The townsfolk emerged slowly, stunned, unsure if it was over. The preacher limped to Nia's side, nodding with gratitude but not speaking. There weren't words for what had just happened. The fire faded. The crack in the earth sealed itself like a wound, deciding to heal. The enemy leader looked up at Nia, eyes no longer black but deeply human and full of sorrow. "They used me," he said. "They used all of us." "I know," she replied. Then he vanished. Not walked away, not ran. Vanished, like a candle's flame in wind. The remaining riders turned their horses and rode off, silent and broken. By morning, the sky was normal again, but nothing else was. Nia sat alone by the well. The stone her mother gave her now sat quietly in her hand, not glowing, not pulsing, just still, a relic, a reminder. Mahala sat beside her, offering a piece of bread and a flask of water. "You hungry?" Nia smiled but didn't take it. "Tired more than anything. You earned it." The town had changed. People passed by and nodded at her now, some with guilt, some with awe, all with a kind of cautious respect. The girl they'd called cursed had just saved every one of them. "Why did the land answer me?" Nia asked. "Why me?" Mahala looked up at the clouds. "Because it remembers who walks softly and who walks true. Your mother was both. You carry her in you, not just her blood. Her decisions, her pain, her strength." Nia turned the stone in her fingers. "She really gave herself up for me?" "She didn't die, Nia," Mahala said, voice soft. "She became part of the land, part of the fire that listens. That fire called you home." Nia stared into the distance. "I felt her when I spoke those words. I think she was there." "She was." Mahala nodded. "And she will be. Always." A quiet settled between them, the kind of quiet that comes after storms. Not peace, but stillness. Breathing room. But Nia knew this wasn't the end. It was something else. A turning point. "I don't think I can stay here," she said. "Not forever." Mahala didn't look surprised. "I didn't expect you to. The land called you back. But now it'll ask more of you. There are others out there. Like you. Lost. Hunted. Hiding from themselves." Nia frowned. "What am I supposed to do?" "Find them," Mahala said. "Teach them. Help them stand." "I'm no teacher. You weren't a flamekeeper either." "Until you were." Nia laughed. A small, tired laugh, but real. "What if I mess it up?" Mahala stood slowly, bones creaking like old floorboards. "You will, and you'll learn. That's the work." Nia looked up. "Will I see you again?" Mahala leaned down, touched her shoulder gently and whispered, "Here, always." The words sank deeper this time. Not just a comfort, but a promise. A truth rooted in something older than the town, older than the bloodlines, older than the fire itself. That night, Nia packed lightly. A blanket, a flask, the stone, a knife. The whole town watched her ride out. No one stopped her. No one needed to. She wasn't running this time. She was riding toward something, toward others like her, toward the next story. Because her place wasn't just here anymore. It was everywhere the fire whispered a name. The trail was dry and endless. Dust rose behind her like memory, clinging to her coat, her hair, her name. The townspeople had watched her vanish into the sunrise, but no one followed. No one called out. Some stories aren't meant to be interrupted. They just keep riding. Nia crossed ridges where the wind never stopped blowing, and rivers so still they looked like glass waiting to break. She passed through ghost towns where doors swung on hinges but no footsteps echoed. Old scars in the land whispered her forward. The stone in her pocket never glowed again, but she kept it close anyway, not for power but for anchor. On the fourth night, she camped under a sky so wide it felt like falling. No fire, just stars, and silence. That's when she heard them. Footsteps, soft, bare. She sat up slowly, hand on the knife, but the figure that emerged from the shadows wasn't a threat. It was a girl, younger than her, maybe 13, eyes too wide, face too thin, dressed in rags that hung off her bones. They stared at each other for a long time, neither speaking. Then Nia stood and pulled a piece of bread from her satchel. The girl didn't move. "It's okay," Nia said. "You hungry?" The girl nodded just once. She stepped forward, took the bread, and sat. Still no words. But her eyes never left Nia's. "You running from someone?" Nia asked. The girl didn't answer. Didn't need to. Nia saw the bruises, the cuts, the way her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to vanish. So they sat together, two quiet shadows under a wide sky. sharing the kind of silence only survivors understand. After a while, the girl asked, "Are you a witch?" Nia smiled, slow and tired. "Sometimes. Are you gonna hurt me?" "No," she said. "Never." The girl looked down at the dirt. "People say I got something wrong in me." Nia didn't speak. She just reached into her pocket, pulled out the stone, and handed it to her. The girl turned it over in her hands, eyes wide. "It's warm. Means it knows you," Nia whispered. The girl looked up. "What do I do with it?" "Keep it close, someday it'll answer." They sat like that until the sky began to lighten. Before they parted ways, the girl pointed at the horizon and asked, "Where are you going?" Nia looked out, blinking against the gold light of morning. "Everywhere." "Why?" "Because there's others. Like you. Like me." The girl nodded, understanding more than words allowed. They didn't hug. They didn't cry. But when they walked in opposite directions, both looked back. Just once. And that was enough. Weeks passed, then months. In far-off towns, folks told stories of a young woman who rode in when no one else would, who stopped fires with her hands, who healed sick land with whispers and smoke. Some called her a spirit. Others swore she was a curse. The stories never agreed. But everywhere she went, children stopped hiding. Fires burned just a little brighter. And the wind carried her name like a song nobody remembered learning. One night under a half-moon, Nia found herself back at the ridge, the same one where Mahala had told her the truth. The stones were still there, the earth still warm, but Mahala was gone. No tracks, no note, just a bundle of herbs tied in red twine and a feather that hadn't come from any bird she knew. Nia didn't cry. She just sat down, placed the stone beside the bundle, and closed her eyes. The wind picked up, soft at first, then stronger. It didn't push. It carried. And when Nia opened her eyes again, she wasn't afraid anymore. She stood, faced the horizon, and walked. No horse, no trail, just her feet, the fire in her bones, and the knowledge that wherever she set her boots, something would change. Behind her, the stone pulsed once, then went still. The wind whispered, "Here, always."